Okay, so I've just read an interesting report from USA Today, but there's many other links on Facebook. If you just type Titanic II into Facebook, there's many links. So apparently an Australian billionaire, Clive Palmer, is set to go ahead with his plan to make a replica of the world's most famous ship, of course, the Titanic. Um, Now, if all goes to plan, this is set to be completed by 2018, and its maiden voyage will be from Shanghai to Dubai, which of course is different from the original maiden voyage of Southampton to New York. But there's going to be a few adjustments. It's going to have welding on its hull as opposed to riveting. It's going to be improved safety procedures, such as improved number of lifeboats. There's going to be an extra deck. But in every other regard, this is going to be an exact replica of the original 1911 ship. I say 1911 because that's when it was built. It sailed in 1912, but was completed in 1911. Um, and I've just been thinking about this. I thought would be a good subject material for a video. I have really mixed views on it. Now, a few years ago, I would have thought this sounded like a very tacky idea, and there are some who say that it's disrespectful. Well, first thing I want to say why I have an interest in this. I'm from Belfast in Northern Ireland, which of course is where the Titanic was built. I was born on the 1st of September 1985, which was the very day that Robert Ballard rediscovered it on the bottom of the Atlantic, the 1st of September 1985. And my grandparents own a bed and breakfast in Belfast. And although it's not 100% sure, there's a strong indication that Thomas Andrews lived in the same house. So I have those personal connections to the ship. That's why it's always had a big impact on me. And I've always been fascinated by the Titanic, probably always will be. Um, Regarding this thing about it being disrespectful, I'm not really sure how it's disrespectful. And there was an interesting interview in the link with the granddaughter of Molly Brown. If you're familiar with the Titanic story, you'll know Molly Brown was the first class American passenger. She was very colourful character. She had married, I think, a mining heir, and she was seen as one of the heroines of the Titanic because she encouraged crew members to go back and rescue other survivors. But what her granddaughter said is that something that people forget is the survivors of the Titanic, because only about a third of the passengers survived, about 700 out of about 2,200. Um, they went through an almost guilt. And what she's saying is actually this is a fitting tribute to those people. We remember those who died, but those who survived arguably suffered a lot more because they had to live the rest of their lives knowing that they'd survived. Of course, they'd done nothing wrong. And at the time, there was huge social stigma on men, especially prominent men who survived. But, by today's standards, the only thing they done was survived. Um, so what she said was that this is actually a fitting testimony to their experience. Um, his company is called Blue Star Line. Again, the man is called Clive Palmer. Unless I'm mistaken, this is the same guy that wanted to recreate Jurassic Park in an Australian theme park. So I guess he's like a real life, I was going to say John Hammond, but then I don't know what the Titanic equivalent would be. I think it's very intriguing. I mean, the design would be exactly like the original. It would have Turkish baths, it would have exercise rooms, it would be designed like an Edwardian liner. So we're not talking about one of these super size luxury liners like the Oasis class. Presumably, it would be smaller than that if it's the measurement of the Titanic. But when I look at it, the first thing I think of is James Cameron's film set. It's just difficult to imagine this as a real ship. Now, in terms of it being disrespectful, a while back I would have thought along those lines, but when I think about it, I'm not really sure how it is disrespectful. I mean, if there was to be a rebuilding of the Wilhelm Gustloff or any other famous ship that sank, would people call it disrespectful? Maybe they would, but I don't see how it's disrespectful. I mean, when Freedom Tower went up in New York, do people say that was disrespectful to the victims of 9/11? I don't think so. Um, if anything, surely it would be going against the grain of human survival to just kind of leave something as, I mean, you just say, well, this was a major disaster, so let's never do it again. Now, the problem with the Titanic was safety. I think most people would agree with that. And I have confidence that this will be a much safer ship than the original. It's difficult to see a ship with that design in the 21st century, and Titanic 2 isn't exactly original. You know, I think New Titanic or Titanic Horizon or something like that would sound a bit more inspiring. But I don't really, I don't really like this thing whereby as soon as someone has an idea, people immediately get cynical and immediately want to tear it down. I mean, you have to give the man credit for creativity and for, if not creativity, at least coming up with an inspiring idea. I don't think it's disrespectful to the victims. I don't see where that comes from. I really don't see where the supposed disrespect lies. I mean, for one thing, it's been over 100 years since the disaster. Um, the Titanic will always fascinate. What would be disrespectful is tasteless jokes, and maybe trying to, bring the original wreck up. That would probably be disrespectful, because it would be like pillaging a grave. But rebuilding the ship, I don't see how that's disrespectful. I don't see that as any different from building Freedom Tower on the site of Twin Towers. And I don't think that is disrespectful. I think that's just a regeneration of the American spirit. Likewise, I think rebuilding the Titanic is an homage to the thousands of workmen in Harland and Wolff and Belfast. Um, it's an homage to Thomas Andrews. It's an homage to creativity. Um, so I really don't think that, I think people are, if that is why people are attacking it, I disagree. And certainly survivors of those, I mean, relatives of survivors seem to be welcoming the idea from what I gather. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Like I say, there clearly are safety improvements to this. Personally, I'd feel safer on this than I would on one of those Oasis class liners. I think they're just too big. Um, I mean, cramming 4,000 people onto a ship, and whereas this one's 2,000, it's a bit of a more realistic figure. It'll certainly be a big, big, big story when it happens, if it happens. I mean, of course, that's the other thing. It's not set in stone that this will go ahead. Presumably, he needs to do lots of negotiations with the Chinese if it's going to be a shipyard in Shanghai. Uh, but the guy's a billionaire, so certainly got the money to do it. So yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting subject. Um, I don't agree that it's disrespectful to the victims. Um, do I have any concerns? Well, my concerns are purely about aesthetics, because you're taking an Edwardian design and trying to bring it into the 21st century. Now, I'm not sure if that could work as an idea. That's because it would almost be like a floating theme park or something. So that side of things seems almost tacky. Not disrespectful, just a bit tacky. I can't really see it. I mean, I'm sure it will be a beautiful thing to behold, but again, I'll look at it and I can't help just thinking that's James Cameron's film set, as opposed to an actual real ship. So there's a lot of angles to look at this. I'm going to round it up there. Let me know your thoughts. If you have watched the whole way through this video, I want to make a quick point about a completely unrelated news story. It looks like Sadiq Khan is on course to win the London mayoral election in May. He's currently comfortably in the lead to his nearest rival, Zach Goldsmith, for the Tories. As I understand it, George Galloway is standing, which would be a disaster, because George Galloway is a very polarising figure. Sean Berry of the Greens, but I don't think the Greens will ever convince the whole of London, or at least a significant portion, to get the mayoral candidate. Um, I quite like Sadiq Khan. I don't know a great deal about him, but he comes across as a good sound centrist. I'm a centrist, so my sympathies would be with him. And if he does win, it would be historic. He'd be, politically speaking, the highest ranking British Asian ever. And that would be the highest office ever held by a British Asian. Mayor of London's a very powerful position. It's a very prominent position. So yeah, it looks like he's on course to win, and I think that's good, because he just comes across as a good, solid centrist candidate. But need to find out more about his manifesto and so on. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on those subjects. Cheers.